Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Charlie Kirk is now unofficially a therapist as he tries to fix the divide between this liberal boomer parent and his young conservative son. Let's dive in.
Hello guys, my name is Joey. I brought my father with me. He's a very liberal father, and
I'm part of the enemy within, the radical liberals, and I have a question for you. Our family's divided. We're divided the same way the nation is divided.
I'm conservative, by the way.
We fuss and we fight about this all the time. I see the nation coming to the same blows that we are coming to on a daily basis. Yet I don't see the president or anyone in his administration even addressing the issue of the division across our country and across our families. I have a serious question. Will anything ever be remedied? A nation divided against itself will not stand, neither will a family divided against itself. Is there any hope?
Good point. So maybe President Trump should put like a couple people who ran for president as Democrats in his cabinet, right?
It wouldn't hurt a thing.
Yeah, like Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard.
Bobby Kennedy, I wonder if his...
Well, Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi ran for president as Democrats. Has that ever happened in modern American history where a president has put two people who ran against him for the presidency in his own cabinet? Has that ever happened before? Doesn't that help heal a country?
See, that's the division I'm talking about right there.
No, but help me.
He's asking me a question, and he turned on me and said,
okay,
get him.
Hold on, that's a father-son issue. We're having a dialogue.
Yeah, that's it.
But
right?
Hold on, that's normal, okay? And that's fine. I'm asking you a question, though, because it's easy to call Trump divisive, but answer and think deeply about this before you answer. Doesn't that say something for unity to bring two people that were Democrats that both ran for the presidency into your own cabinet? That's bringing the country together.
Has it worked? That's my... you may be right. It is certainly representative of some inclusion. However, it doesn't seem to be working.
Did Obama or Biden ever bring Republicans who ran against them for the presidency in their own cabinets?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, so maybe Trump has gone above and beyond more than the media would give him credit for healing our nation's divides. I think that's noteworthy, right?
It's noteworthy, yes.
Yeah, but you stated your statement. You began with, you have not seen the president try to heal this country. Healing begins with action, not just words, right?
Okay.
And so bringing two people that wanted themselves to be president in his administration is pretty great. As far as, between your son, I'm interested. Why do you think your son is conservative?
I have no clue. I'll let him answer that question.
That's a bad answer. Hold on a second. You as a father should listen to your son. You shouldn't say, hold on a second.
I listen to him
We're
all the
both
time.
fathers. Hold on a second. That's a bad answer.
I listen to him all the time.
But hold on. But then you just said you don't know.
I don't know where he went so bad. I mean, come on. It's like, I don't know where he went wrong. I don't know how he went off the rails.
See that? All right. Would the smarter of the two like to chime in here? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I used to be at one point on my father's side, and upon doing my own research and seeing things firsthand, I've switched sides, and I've seen like the liberal tears that he has, like the way that he's complaining, and it's like,
don't antagonize. You have to honor your parents. Don't antagonize them. Okay.
100%.
So
and I do respect my father, and I love him.
And you should honor him, and you should also love your son and see where he's coming from.
But back to your point, though. We talk every day about politics to the point where it's divided us. And so for him to say that he does not know where I stand is
So let me ask you, why do you think your father is a liberal? Let me ask you.
I think he's a liberal because No,
have him answer. This is I'm helping you. I'm a group therapist. You understand what I'm charging for this right now? This is like $5,000 an hour stuff. So yeah.
So I think he's a liberal. Well, I know he's a liberal because he just eats. He gobbles up everything that he. Okay, this is why I know he's a liberal, because he voted for Kamala Harris and he didn't even know why.
Do you think that maybe he wants to believe government will do good? Maybe that's...
Of course. Okay.
Is that a good answer?
Yes, sir.
Now, maybe your son is going more conservative because he thinks government hasn't done a lot of good. Is that maybe a fair, charitable interpretation?
That makes relative sense.
Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. So you guys have a generational divide. You look at government as being probably a force for good. He's grown up in a circumstance where he's seen government declare wars and do a lot of nonsense like the Iraq War. He's nodding his head. Trigger the financial crisis, only accentuate income inequality. So what I'm just saying for you two, because a father-son divide is more important than politics, is really try to come down at what generational perspective do they have. Finally, where do you get your news from?
You, baby.
Okay, and where do you get and sir, where do you get your news from?
I don't watch any kind of video media at all. I get it mostly by reading, and I go through a broad spectrum of different sources from all over.
So here's what I'll just say in closing, guys, is that never let politics get in the way of the beautiful relationship between father and son. My advice first is for the son to the father, understand he comes from a different generational perspective. He thinks government is probably a good force and, that we shouldn't question our institutions. Now, your son, understandably, is seeing it harder than ever to own a home. He's seen a border wide open. He's seen lies from politicians. He's seen the enrichment of the ruling class. And instead of interrupting and want to get in an edge, smartly be like, maybe my son is processing a way that I might not agree with, but he's growing up in a different circumstance than I ever would.
Y'all, this is an unusually wholesome moment, and we don't get a lot of these in politics. And what Charlie Kirk has done here is absolutely fantastic, because he's allowing both sides, both the liberal boomer, which is a very interesting specimen all in itself, and I'll start by talking about him first, and his very conservative son, who, let's be honest, if you looked at them at first glance, you probably would have switched the two. And so the son is, let's be honest here, is probably still in sort of his rebellious phase, because his father has done a good job in instilling him with at least the ability to question things, to go out and seek your own answers. And while the two are very contentious, and I think I detect an old-style Southern accent, maybe a bit Midwestern from the dad, the dude's definitely a liberal boomer, but he's the kind that I'd be willing to have a long conversation with and definitely grab a beer with. This is the kind of dude that, even though we're going to come away disagreeing, we're going to enjoy the conversation. So this is the kind of parent that you want raising kids, because at least they're going to give their kid a fighting chance to have a good, deep intellectual conversation. But the fundamental problem with the liberal boomer is they grew up under the facade of the FDR and Great Societies that were created back during the Great Depression and during the 1960s. And so let's work a little bit backwards here. The Great Society was an attempt by Lyndon Baines Johnson to keep the spirit of JFK and FDR alive and give us Medicaid and expand a whole lot of other social safety nets. Ultimately, however, after about 20 years, even Democrats had to admit that this ended up failing. There's a great book on the subject. I wish I had it with me. Basically, the whole thesis of the book, written by a Democrat, is that money and good intentions aren't enough. I believe that's the actual title. And the whole thesis of that is basically, even though we've thrown a whole lot of money at American poverty, even though we've tried a war on drugs, even though we have tried these social safety nets, they don't work. They'll work in other nations, but for some reason they don't work in the United States. And it's mainly because we're so car-centric. Basically, having that car means that you are going to have greater access to capital, and either A, you'll pull yourself out of poverty in no time, or B, you're stuck in a terrible cycle, and there's another way to fix that. And it isn't through taxes, and it isn't through a social safety net. And so this old liberal boomer has the moral center at least to know that it's a good idea to help people. It's a good idea to have these safety nets. Except, as I've just described as the thesis of one of my favorite books that I studied back in college, that ultimately this social safety nets don't work. The Great Society ended in abject failure, and Social Security is the #1 expenditure of our federal government, and we are now drowning in debt because of Social Security, Medicare, and even the interest payments. That is how bad these policies have been, all because we weren't able to really understand how populations worked. Ironically enough, this boomer, the kid looks like he can't even be my age. This boomer's probably... This dude's at least in his mid-60s, which means that he grew up and was starting to see the Great Society work, and he thought that it was going to continue to work, which means that he was either probably in a Rust Belt town or he was in a Southern town back when the Democrats still had control in the South and in some parts of the Rust Belt. And so this dude has lived with the facade of the Great Society and FDR's reforms actually working, when the reality was our economy had boomed to such a massive extent that there was nowhere else for people to have trade. There was no one else manufacturing anything. So this man has seen the world and does, again, have a good moral center. It's rare that you find these kind of liberals, but he doesn't understand that ultimately these welfare programs don't work. And so he's contentious with his son, and they're going back and forth, and it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but they're definitely picking at each other. And Charlie Kirk is trying to calm them both down and try to get them to understand where they're coming from. And ultimately, he comes across this basic truth. Conservatives see the federal government and they see a lot of bloat, a lot of waste, things that basically just aren't being good stewards of the American taxpayer dollar. Okay? They're not being good stewards of that. Meanwhile, the old boomer still thinks that having a large federal government is going to help people, when the reality is things like OSHA have gotten in the way of a whole lot of factories and have even shut down a few because one or two things weren't up to code properly, because they basically went overboard on safety precautions. Then you've got the EPA, which instead of protecting the environment, absolutely keeps progress from ever happening and is just another way for basically rich liberals to extract wealth. Because that's what's been going on in our federal government. It's been an easy way for college-educated liberals to go in, get a cushy job, get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, or at least six figures, for basically saying, you can't build that here, you can't build that there, give me money. That is what this entire bloat works on right now, and it's time for it to be deflated. Okay? That's going to be painful for this old boomer because it means that he's not going to... It means that he didn't evolve with the times. Meanwhile, his son fundamentally understands that there's a problem, and that's why he's brought his dad here to meet Charlie Kirk and have what was essentially a great little back and forth. Charlie Kirk might be an unofficial therapist now because that was family therapy in a nutshell, and I think we need more of that. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one, and until then, y'all have a good one.